Um, I hope everybody's having a good weekend now that it's almost over. I know that I said that I would come back on here and update you guys on some cases that I wanted to, that I've been following. You know, the Mimi Torres case, the 11-year-old that was found in a storage bin behind an abandoned house in Connecticut. And who else? The um, is it Kalia or Jalea Toll, the um, OnlyFans mom who left her two babies home so that she could go have some high school fun because she felt she deserved it. And one passed away from starvation, and the other one was near death when they were found. Um, anyway, never mind all that. I looked, and none of their latest hearings were televised, and so there's really not much to report other than the fact that they, in the Mimi Torres case, the mother and the aunt and the ex-boyfriend of the mother have all pleaded not guilty, which we knew they would. And in the OnlyFans case, she has also pled not guilty. So, you know. Um, so updates to follow when I find anything. They're very. I can't. I found the case docket, but for the OnlyFans mom, but um, they don't have any of the documents available because I wanted to look at her probable cause affidavit, and yeah. So anyway, so I just wanted to come on here and update you on that stuff. What else? I don't know. How's everybody's weekend going? Good. The weather here in California sucks. It's windy and raining. We've had uh, thunder showers all weekend. It's kind of exciting, but I am, they say April showers bring May flowers, and that used to be true. I mean, we used to have rain all through April in the past, but we haven't had that in a while, so I didn't think we were going to have it this year because we were up in the high 80s for a couple weeks, but now all of a sudden it's pouring rain, thunder and lightning, and windy as all get out, and I can do with it all except for the wind. I hate the wind, and it's almond season, so the almond blossoms are blooming, and so my allergies are killing me, literally. I mean, I was at work the other night and I felt like I could take my nose, turn it inside out, and just scratch the hell out of it because it's so freaking bad. So there's that. I came across, and it's not a new case, actually. It happened in 2024, but the defendant, the accused, is having a trial coming up. She's got some hearings coming up in April, I believe. It is a PhD grad student from San Diego who is charged with torturing and unaliving her friend's newborn twin. And I think she's also been charged with abuse of the other twin. Um, sad case. And I don't know why, because I know that her trial was supposed to start in June of 25, I believe. And now, for some reason, we're here in 2026, and it looks like we might get to catch this case. But before I do that, I wanted to show a video that I came across. It's insane. It just goes to show you how, when you're in the police custody, how, they are totally responsible for you and your life. And should something happen, I'm sure that it can be a big lawsuit. Let me see, just one second. Okay, this teen, I think he's a teen. Anyway, he gets picked up for some kind of theft or something, and he's in the back of the police car. It's a long video, so we're just going to go through it fast. And he gets picked up, and he's put in the back of a police car. And the crap that he's pulling back there, like he tries, just one second. Excuse me. Like somehow they miss a cigarette lighter on him, and so he tries to set the back seat on fire, and just a bunch of shit. Kicks the partition between him and the cop, trying to get to the cop. He, of course, has gotten out of his cuffs, and that was the first thing he did. And he's just an annoying suspect to have in your car, basically. And he's just doing all this stuff, and so they're gonna pull over and reapply the handcuffs and whatnot. And before they do, the police, the cruiser gets T-boned by another car, and it's crazy what happens. So let's get on with it, shall we?
When Officer Justin Thompson stepped out of his patrol car on an unusually cool summer evening in Jonesboro, Arkansas, to respond to a routine disorderly conduct call, he never could have imagined the catastrophe his day would end with. At the time of the call on the 18th of August in 2016, Officer Thompson was still a rookie, having only attended his swearing-in ceremony 6 months earlier. But when the Jonesboro Police Department received complaints from workers at the Turtle Creek Mall about a young man who seemed heavily intoxicated, he was one of the handful of officers who headed straight to the scene. As one of the employees, likely the mall security guard, reported to the officers when they arrived.
He came in and I saw him He was up there by Polaris, and he was acting real funny. I kind of watched him a little bit, and he came up to me and said, "Give me a hug, man." And I can't hug you. So at least give me a fist bump. I was like, all right. And he kind of walked on down. Just, I'm going to Aeropostale. So I was like, I didn't smell any alcohol on him. And then they said he was in Aeropostale. They said that he told the people in there that he was drunk. And we found him in GNC, and that's when we stopped him.
When the officers tracked down the young man in question, they found him wandering around the mall's northeast entrance. So they guided him over to where their police vehicles were parked at a nearby loading dock to ask him some questions. As the mall workers had described, the man did seem heavily intoxicated, slurring and cursing while belligerently refusing to answer initial questions. Members of law enforcement left it to Officer Thompson to conduct the interview because, although he was a rookie, he possessed such a friendly and personable demeanor that it was assumed he could get the surly suspect to open up.
What's the name, man? Don't? Well, we were trying to save it for you, but
This goes on for a few minutes, with the young man slurring and cussing unintelligibly before eventually giving them his first name, Logan, in between assurances that he ain't hurt anybody.
How much did you have to drink, man? How much did you have to drink? I have to. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is, my business. Logan, what's your last name, Logan? Logan, what's your last name, man? You know, do you know your birthday? You don't? Come on, man. I mean, look, like I said to the mall cop, cut me some slack. If you just take me home, you're not going to anything. Yeah, you're not cooperating. Hey, y'all got trying to lock me up. You know, I need to scream on my mom died. I understand that.
At this point, it sounds as though Logan is claiming his mom died, and though this is tragic if true, neither his lawyer nor his family will mention this detail when speaking to the press later. It's unclear what exactly he's referring to here, or if he just made it up. He continues wailing in this fashion for a few more minutes until an exasperated Officer Thompson promises to give Logan a ride, being careful not to specify where, in order to get the intoxicated young man to calm down and get into the patrol car.
Logan, you tell me who you are. You tell me who you are, I promise I'll give you a ride, all right? All right, look, thank you, promise.
This pinky promise would wind up being Officer Thompson's biggest mistake. After being put into the back of the patrol car, Logan once again becomes agitated. He directs bizarre accusations at Officer Thompson.
I should have played fair. I should have. Like you're cheap. I'm not cheap, man. I got no heart.
Alone in the back of the car, Logan manages to get his cuffed hands in front of him and begins to eerily talk to himself. He attempts to open the car door.
Always play fair. And it backfires on me because I play fair. You sold. You sold.
Okay, I can tell you last name, man.
I don't know. Holy crap, you're not playing fair. You're lying. You lied to me. You lied to me. You promised me you'd give me a ride home. Instead of trying to give me a ride to jail, you twisted your shit on me. That's tough.
I put in the back of the tent. I know.
I'm smart.
You are?
I am. Did you know that my dad was a vet?
You have a car. I'm going to take you out the car. What do you want to do?
I'll get out of the car if you give me your hand off my arm, please. Thank you. Let go, man. I'll get out. All right, now listen. I just said I get out.
The officers take a photo for dispatch and continue to fill out the voucher form for the contents of his pockets. Logan is then returned to the back of the patrol car where he immediately begins twisting around in an attempt to free himself from the cuffs once more.
That's me.
Thank you.
You lied to me. You lied to me. I thought you might have played fair. But you lied to me. You know what?
Logan won't provide his name, and the officer is well within the scope of asking for Logan to ID himself. You're required to ID yourself if an officer believes you've committed a crime or are about to, and they have reasonable, articulable suspicion. If an officer believes you're intoxicated in public, like in this specific situation, they're investigating that crime, and therefore, you must identify yourself. In addition, the officer hasn't lied. He's just used his words carefully, stating he would give Logan a ride. As a result, he was able to get Logan into the police vehicle.
If you want a professional looking live stream without needing an entire production team, you need to start using Restream. From product launches to...
Let me ask you something, man. What's up? Since you're such a good guy, you just play by the rules. What's up? Tell me. You know what's up? What's up? How this country's doing. Right? What did y'all do? What happened? You broke your promise. You didn't go right. Didn't go right. You know? Hey, how did you lie? You think you could be lied. You lied. You know what I meant. You keep getting on. I'm a fucking liar. I'm lying to try to speak. It is. I always believe that this is the important thing that right there. So I don't know what they're going to do. Did you give them why? Is that why you lied? Why? I mean, you're not real anymore. Who knows? I might have lied too. You know, it's funny. What's on really smart? You are? My dad was the best. Did you know that? I did.
Things are about to take an extremely horrifying turn.
You don't think I know how to stop you? Look at this. Real free.
At this point, Officer Thompson begins to panic, as he's just realized that Logan has escaped his cuffs for the second time, and now has both hands free. He speeds up the patrol car, trying to get away from the public, turning on his lights and sirens in an attempt to clear the way, as he has no idea what Logan is about to do. Logan, meanwhile, lies on his back, and pulls out a lighter in an attempt to light the back of the police car on fire. But suddenly, the officer begins to lose control of the vehicle. The police cruiser slides through 2 westbound lanes and bounces over a curb before a fence causes it to roll on its side and skids several yards through the lawn of a local business.
I thought he got T-boned, but he lost control of the car, which is even worse. And he's a rookie. Oh my God. Now watch this. This is insane. The centrifugal force that the car gains. Watch what happens to this guy in the back seat. It's crazy. Is that not insane? He just got sucked out the back window.
Officer Thompson was knocked unconscious as several cars screeched to a halt near the scene. Meanwhile, after bouncing through the rear window, Logan landed some dozen or so feet away in the grassy front lawn of the business. He was dazed and confused, but not down for the count, as several witnesses saw him staggering off in the gangly lope of a newborn giraffe in an attempt to escape around the side of the building. A small number of onlookers chased after him, managing to corner him in an alcove set into the building where he screamed obscenities at them. If he'd been irritable before, he was now officially cranky, requiring officers to tase him at least.
I believe he lived and ran off. He lived and ran off. The cop who is restrained and wearing a seatbelt is the one that's hurt and unconscious. This kid gets ejected out of a back window, lands dozens of feet away, and gets up and runs away with a few scratches. But I bet you his family's gonna sue.
Once in order to get him back into the new patrol car that showed up to collect him. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson had to be cut from the car and airlifted to a Memphis trauma hospital, though he was later released, having only suffered a concussion. Logan, who emerged from the wreck remarkably unscathed, was charged with escape, fleeing on foot, public intoxication, and minor in possession, though it's unclear whether he served any time for these charges. His lawyer, Robert Wells, showed up to court with a bit of a bombshell. He explained that his client, 19-year-old Logan Younger, had been diagnosed with autism, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder, and therefore shouldn't be held accountable for his actions, going so far as to claim that the officer breaking his pinky promise caused the unpredictable behavior seen in Logan. Wells also leveled accusations at the JPD, saying that their policies needed to be reviewed and the officer driving the car should be under investigation, as he believed Officer Thompson was driving too fast and shouldn't have had his lights and sirens on. While it appears the family may have tried to bring Officer Thompson to court, the suit seems to have been dismissed in 2019. After this little trip through the back window of the police cruiser and subsequent charges, Logan's life took a bit of an odd turn. The clip of him escaping his handcuffs and bouncing through the rear window appeared online later that year and went extremely viral, prompting Logan to try to start a small online career on YouTube and TikTok. At first, he was something of an anti-hero, the so-called handcuff Houdini, but even as he began to make more content, popularity never grew, as it was clear his life and mental health were spiraling. He appeared in multiple TikTok videos with injuries, sporting black eyes and a disheveled appearance, and it was clear he was still getting into trouble with the police for his drinking.
So today, show some superhuman abilities or whatever.
Whether or not his videos on his superpowers are signs of delusional thinking or merely an act is unknown. Strangely enough, Logan wasn't the only one to encounter another setback after the crash, as in 2017, just 1 year later, Officer Thompson would be fired from his position with the JPD for allegedly using the police-issued gas card for his private vehicles. However, it's unclear if he was charged or cleared of allegations. Currently, he is a real estate agent.
Yeah. So, anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and thought nobody had ever shown it to me before. Apparently, it went viral, but I'd never seen it before. I thought it was pretty interesting. So, let's get down to brass tacks. Okay, I'm going to read this article to you that was written by Paula Reed Ward 2 months ago, February 23rd, 2026. And it says that it's in the Nicole Virzi case. It says judge refuses to bar statement to police from accused baby killer in Shady Side homicide. Okay. So okay. Nicole Virzi told detectives she couldn't control herself while hurting the infant. A judge will not suppress a statement from a Pittsburgh homicide defendant to police that she dropped a baby, quote unquote, hard a couple of times on the floor of a Shadyside home several hours before the child died. Nicole Virzi, 31 of San Diego, is charged with killing her best friend's infant son in 2024 and might face the death penalty. She sought to bar prosecutors from using a potentially incriminating statement. Virzi's attorneys argued at a hearing in November that her statement, in which she admitted a long-time compulsion to hurt children and did so with Leon, the 6-week-old victim, oh my God, had been coerced following a long day during which she had little sleep or food. On Monday, Allegheny County Common Pleas Judge Jill E. Rangos ruled that Virzi's statement was, quote, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily made, end quote. For several minutes, Rangos recounted the circumstances of Virzi's interviews with police that day and found nothing that made her believe the statements could not be used at trial. She noted that Virzi was 29 years old at the time and was a PhD student studying clinical psychology. Wow, imagine that. While in custody that day, Rangos said, Virzi also spoke for 45 minutes with a defense attorney and with her parents. Quote, the vast majority of time she was in that room, she did not appear to be in any distress, end quote, the judge said. Virzi had come to Pittsburgh to visit her best friend, who had recently had twins in mid-June 2024. On June 15, her friend had left Virzi home watching Leon while they took their other son to the hospital. Around 11:17 p.m., Virzi called 911 to report that Leon was having difficulty breathing and had a lump on his head. An ambulance took Leon from his Shadyside apartment to the hospital, where he died a few hours later. Just after 6 a.m. on June 16th, police met Virzi where she had been staying and asked her to go to headquarters for questioning. She agreed. Virzi spent 13 hours at the police department that day before she was taken to the Allegheny County Jail. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but oh well. In the beginning of her interview, Virzi received her Miranda warnings, Rangos said. Virzi told detectives, quote unquote, I think I have to choose to be silent for myself. But Virzi kept talking. Quote unquote, she's equivocating, Rangos said in announcing her decision on the motion to suppress. She wasn't sure. But when Virzi told detectives she wanted to talk, they read her the Miranda warning again, and she told police that she had placed Leon in his bouncy chair and she fell asleep. Okay, he's 6 weeks old. What's he going to do in a bouncy chair? Virzi claimed when she woke up, Leon was on the floor crying next to the chair. But detectives continued to press her, telling Virzi the infant could not have sustained the type of injuries he had from a fall from such a short distance. And how would he fall out of the chair? He can't move himself around yet. He's 6 weeks old. At 8:30 a.m., the detectives told Virzi they had found cameras in the apartment. Ooh. It was then that she asked for a lawyer and questioning stopped. Over the next several hours, Virzi remained in an interview room where detectives brought her water, coffee, pretzels, and a protein bar. They allowed her to speak to a defense attorney and her parents on the phone. Then her parents arrived at the station just before 3 p.m., and she spoke in person with them for about 10 minutes. Although Rangos agreed it was a long day and Virzi had likely not slept much, Virzi showed no signs of lethargy or being overly fatigued. She was treated respectfully, not further interrogated in any way, treated kindly and professionally, Rangos said. Around 6:18 p.m., Virzi asked to speak to the lead detective on the case. During that interview, after she was informed of her right to remain silent a third time, she admitted to harming Leon, police said. Virzi told detectives she shook Leon hard and dropped him. She also said she flipped him upside down on the bathroom tile floor. Quote, something just came over me I couldn't control, end quote, Virzi said in the video recorded interview. Quote, I'm telling you this because I can't keep lying about it. I don't want to hurt anyone anymore, Virzi said. I know the best thing is for me to go away, or maybe worse. Rangos agreed with prosecutors there was probable cause to arrest Virzi and that her statements to police were made voluntarily. Ms. Virzi's statements were not the result of coercion, the judge said. Virzi's case is scheduled for a jury trial on October 1st. Yeah, so there's that. Now, let me see, sorry. Okay, this is a supplemental brief that was filed on February 17th, 2026. Shit. Just 1 second. Why does it keep going back to that when I want to look at that under here? Okay, just 1 second. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing this. Is it going to... Sorry, I'm trying to upload it and it's processing. Because since I downloaded it on a different browser, it's not letting me bring the file up on this browser, which I don't know why. I should be able to bring it up, right? I mean, it shouldn't only come up on the browser that I downloaded it on, right? Because it's going to my files, and my files are my files. But anyway. Okay. But see, I can't read it like this. gosh. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Okay, let's try something else, shall we? Okay, shit. Just 1 second. Where did I find that? Shit. Okay, this is omnibus hearing. I'm not sure what date this was. August 14th. So, and I'll still try and find the other. But until then, we'll read this. This is the omnibus hearing. Okay. Pretrial motions filed by defendant. Now comes defendant Nicole Virzi through counsel Tina O. Miller and William Defenderfer. That is too funny. And presents these omnibus trial motions pursuant to Pennsylvania Rule of Criminal Procedure 578. Ms. Virzi moves the court for the following. 1, to suppress the statement illegally by investigators on June 16, 2024, and the warrantless copying of her cell phone that same day. 2, to suppress the fruits of the search warrants for Ms. Virzi's phone, Google, and internet history obtained by investigators because they are overbroad and based on the illegally obtained statement. 3, to strike the Commonwealth's notice of intent to pursue the death penalty. 4, alternatively, to declare the death penalty unconstitutional and incompatible. Well, what the fuck? What is going on? Sorry. Hold please. What the hell? Sorry. I'm not sure what's going on. Sorry, guys. Obviously, that's not going to cooperate, so let's move on. Sorry. this one more time. Okay, well, I want to download for this one now. God damn it. I'm really starting to get irritated. Just 1 second, sorry. Oh my gosh. These are all her charges. I guess I can show this to you while we're trying to figure out what's going on. She's charged with criminal homicide, endangering welfare of children, parent, guardian, other commits offense, aggravated assault, attempts to cause serious bodily injury or causes injury with extreme indifference, which is a felony 1, and the or F1, the criminal homicide is an H1. Aggravated assault on a victim less than 13 and defendant 18 or older. Aggravated assault victim less than 6 and defendant 18 or over, and endangering welfare of children by a parent, guardian, or other that commits offense. Yeah, so there's that, which is great, but it's not helping me. I don't know why. What the fuck? What happened? Oh my god. I don't know why it's not downloading the documents that I want, just because I'm on a different Okay, I did it. I did it. Okay. It's 146 pages. We're not going to read all the pages. I just want to kind of go over it a little bit. This is Defendant Nicole Virzi's supplemental brief in support of motion to suppress involuntary statements. This is what I was reading to you that the court denied. Defendant Nicole Virzi's statements to Pittsburgh Bureau of Police investigators on June 16, 2024 should all be suppressed as they were the product of an unconstitutional 13-hour detention and arrest. The defendant incorporates by reference her brief in support of her omnibus pretrial motion. There's supplemental argument. The conditions of Ms. Virzi's 13-hour detention were unconstitutionally coercive and made her statements involuntary. Both the length of detention and the conditions of Ms. Virzi's detention are factors this court should consider in determining whether Ms. Virzi's statements were voluntary. And it states a case in directing the courts consider whether the interrogation was so manipulative or coercive that it deprived the defendant of her ability to make a free and unconstrained decision to confess. Her investigators created circumstances that were both coercive and manipulative by extending the length of the detention over 13 hours, as well as the physical and psychological aspects of that detention. When deciding a motion to suppress a confession, the touchstone inquiry is whether the confession was voluntary. Voluntariness is determined from a totality of the circumstances surrounding the confession. The question of voluntariness is not whether the defendant would have confessed without interrogation, but whether the interrogation was so manipulative or coercive that it deprived the defendant of his ability to make a free and unconstrained decision to confess. The Commonwealth has the burden to proving by a preponderance of the evidence that the defendant confessed voluntarily. When assessing the voluntariness pursuant to the totality of the circumstances, a court should look at the following factors: the duration and means of the interrogation, the physical and psychological state of the accused, the conditions attendant to the detention, the attitude of the interrogator, and any and all other factors that could drain a person's ability to withstand suggestion and coercion. The Commonwealth has not satisfied that burden in this case. The 13-hour detention alone was unconstitutionally coercive. A 13-hour detention where a suspect is intentionally isolated from outside contact, thousands of miles from home, while shackled to the floor and locked in an interrogation room without a phone or other means of communication with the outside world other than what is specifically allowed by the police, and unable to freely leave or even go to the bathroom without a double escort, is inherently coercive. I thought they let her talk to her parents on the phone and in person. Didn't they come in? Indeed, the detention here is more than twice as long as what Pennsylvania courts previously considered to be per se coercive. While the length of the interrogation alone is not always dispositive of coercion, if the delay was caused by circumstances within the investigator's control, an otherwise voluntary confession can be suppressed. Importantly, quote, delay for the purpose of interrogation is the epitome, the epitome of unnecessary delay, end quote. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. Internal quotation marks. A delay is unreasonable and unnecessary when it is of a nature to give opportunity for the extraction of a confession. Scientific research and court decisions demonstrate that the time Ms. Virzi spent detained was not trivial. It is well established that admissibility rulings for contested confessions often reflect poor understanding of the power of the weapons of influence inherent in American interrogation. They further reflect assumptions soundly contradicted by science regarding the capacity of normal suspects to withstand such stressors as aversive interrogation length and resist the powerful pressures of self-incrimination. And then it lists the case. Others have noted that, quote unquote, even suspects who vigorously refuse to confess at first will become exhausted over time and lose their will to resist. If the suspect fails to exert his or her rights to avoid or terminate the interrogation, this may go on for many hours. The accused might feel greater and greater need to terminate the interrogation and get away. Without enormous strength of will and self-control, the suspect may do or say whatever is necessary to make it stop. Hence, a false confession. Courts, too, have recognized the straightforward science behind the coercive nature of lengthy interrogations. For example, in Haley v. Ohio, 15-year-old questioned from midnight to 5 a.m., that's only 5 hours. The court recognized that the coerciveness of an interrogation increases with the length of the interrogation. Then in another case, an adult was interrogated for 8 hours. The court held a confession was involuntary where, among other factors, police questioned an emotionally distraught and exhausted defendant for 8 hours. To me, that doesn't seem very long, but given all this, the unjustified 13-hour detention of Ms. Virzi was unconstitutionally coercive and is a sufficient basis on its own to suppress her statements. 2. All other aspects of Ms. Virzi's detention were unconstitutionally coercive as well. Apart from its 13-hour length, there are other aspects of Ms. Virzi's detention, both physical and psychological, which made certain that the environment had a maximally coercive effect. These tactics used by the investigators ultimately paid off in the form of Ms. Virzi's statements, but the means used to accomplish that goal falls far short of the constitutional standard. This is crazy. The physical conditions of Miss Virzi's detention were coercive. Being locked in a small, cold room for hours at a time, shackled to the floor, completely dependent on law enforcement to provide for her basic needs, with no ready access to a bathroom or any sustenance beyond coffee, water, and vending machine junk food, all on a jet-lagged couple hours of sleep, creates the perfect storm for coercing an involuntary statement. That is exactly what Ms. Virzi faced, and it underscores why her statement should be suppressed. The video of Ms. Virzi's detention reveals the myriad adverse physical conditions she had to contend with, all of which added to the coercive environment. She is plainly seen to be shivering. Indeed, her teeth are chattering at one point, and she frequently stands up and moves around to try to keep warm, even though she was wearing a heavy sweatshirt and long pants. Such movement was made more difficult by the fact that she was, for no legitimate reason, shackled to a steel loop in the floor. The video also shows that Ms. Virzi only received food from a vending machine, including pretzels and other junk food, not all of which she even finished. Commonwealth Exhibit 5 at 1931-19. See Commonwealth Exhibit 5 at 1931-19, period. At one point, Detective Triolo complained to Ms. Virzi about how much water she was pounding, and then continued to give her excessive amounts of liquids that only exacerbated the coercive conditions. I don't know how many bottles of water and coffee Ms. Virzi consumed while detained. Ms. Virzi was provided and consumed approximately 2 gallons of liquid. Throughout the video, Ms. Virzi is forced to hold going to the bathroom until someone heard her pleas for help, unlocked the interrogation room, unshackled her from the floor, handcuffed her, and accompanied her to the bathroom. There are at least 6 instances of this captured on the interrogation video at the following times. And we have a footnote. According to weather.gov, the high temperature in Pittsburgh on June 16th reached 89 degrees, so the idea that someone's teeth could be chattering while wearing relatively warm clothing strongly suggests that the temperature in the interrogation room was deliberate. I'd say that. I'd agree with that. Cold, hunger, and physical discomfort can all contribute to the coercive environment of detention. The academic literature shows that Even if the suspect is offered food or rest, he or she may be too anxious to take advantage of those opportunities. There may be physical discomforts due to temperature, unsatisfied needs, or uncomfortable seating. And under such circumstances, the suspect may do or say whatever is necessary to make it stop. Exhibit A at 680. As for hunger, research shows that depleted glucose levels, which are quote unquote not uncommon in police interrogation, can impair individuals' self-control and emotional regulation. While eating can aid in reducing those effects, doing so sporadically may not be enough to offset the depletion of glucose due to the fatigue and extreme stress caused by interrogations. Accordingly, while proper sustenance, a suspect's ability to withstand the stress of interrogation is seriously impacted, making the suspect more susceptible to coercive tactics. These physical factors all demonstrate the coercive nature of Miss Virzi's detention and support suppressing her involuntary statements. B. The psychological conditions of Miss Virzi's detention were coercive. It was not enough that Miss Virzi had to endure the physical difficulties associated with being shackled to the floor in a cold, windowless room for 13 hours, saturated with fluids and limited bathroom access. At one point, Miss Virzi asks an unidentified man, quote, "I don't know if this is possible, but can I, get out of this room for a little bit? I've been here since 7 in the morning." You know what's funny is if you smoke and you ask them to take you out for a cigarette, they'll do that, but they won't take you just to take you outside and let you walk around for a bit. They won't do that, but they'll let you go smoke. That blows me away. Commonwealth Exhibit 5 at 17:37:30, this man responds that, yeah, he'll have to talk to the lead detective. When Detective Triolo returned to the interrogation room, Miss Virzi said, quote unquote, "I'm going crazy in here," and asked, "Can I go on a walk or something?" In response, the detective told her, quote, "No, we're going to just take you to jail. We're going to charge you, okay?" End quote. Wow. This exchange was the culmination of the psychological manipulation investigators engaged in throughout the day that inevitably led to her telling the investigators whatever story they wanted to hear in hopes of getting out of that room. Compounding the investigators' efforts were other psychological factors, including that she was jet-lagged and had at most 3 hours of sleep the night before being subjected to the extended detention. The collective impact of this psychological coercion over the course of 13 hours left Miss Virzi with no choice but to tell the investigators what they wanted to hear, and thus also requires suppression. As for the investigators' actions, the evidence extensively details the use of manipulation, lies, intimidation, and minimization tactics, all aimed at coercing Miss Virzi into making an inculpatory statement. They do this with everybody, though, and it's perfectly legal according to them. Virzi omnibus motion at 1017, outlining the details of investigators' minimization, coercive actions aimed at reinforcing their power over Ms. Virzi, and their use of lies and misrepresentations as a coercive tactic. Minimization has been found to be, quote unquote, inherently coercive because of offering sympathy, providing face-saving excuses, partly blaming the victim or the circumstances of the alleged offense. Investigators can communicate implicit promises of leniency to the suspect. Then it cites a case, recognizing that by offering moral justification and face-saving excuses, investigators communicate by implication that leniency in punishment is forthcoming upon confession. Put differently, minimization makes it more likely that a person like Ms. Virzi will make a statement further underscoring the coerciveness of the tactic. Another aspect of the psychological coercion was the investigators' exercise of control over Ms. Virzi designed to provoke anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. It is well established that interrogators can manipulate a suspect by controlling, quote unquote, when the suspect may eat or drink or go to the bathroom, and otherwise controlling the suspect's freedom of movement and access to the outside world. And then it cites a case and an exhibit. When Miss Virzi invoked her right to counsel, the detectives showed their displeasure at her invocation and punished her by shackling her to the floor, thus making Miss Virzi understand that her refusal to tell the investigators what they wanted to hear had negative consequences and that they had total control over her. When faced with such dire circumstances, individuals like Miss Virzi here come to believe that the best course of action is to cooperate and capitulate. Here, the video shows how the circumstances of Miss Virzi's detention were entirely out of her control, and that her decision to make a statement 13 hours later stemmed from a desire to escape such a stressful situation. For example, none of the Commonwealth's witnesses provided a plausible explanation for why a person who was locked in a room with a two-way mirror in a secure police station needed to be shackled to the floor after she invoked her right to counsel at 8:27 a.m. She had no phone and no ability to contact the outside world on her own. She was never told she could leave. She had to ask for food and water, and as noted, investigators expected her to know what to ask for if she wanted more than vending machine snacks. She had to beg to be let out of the interrogation room by banging on the table or otherwise yelling for help, completely dependent on the investigators for even her most basic needs. After she invoked her right to counsel and asked to make a call, the investigators played a good cop, bad cop routine on Miss Virzi. In response to her request for a phone call, Detective Curtis told Miss Virzi, quote, "You get your phone call down at jail," end quote, and told Miss Virzi she was being detained and if she needed anything, just to yell. A few minutes later, Detective Triolo came back into the room and claimed she knew Ms. Virzi was going through a lot right now, and that because she had compassion for what's going on, she would call Ms. Virzi's parents for her on the detective's work phone. When Ms. Virzi was permitted to talk to her parents, the carrot to the stick, I don't know what that means, she had to agree to the conditions set by investigators, including that everything be recorded and Detective Triolo be present for the call. The lack of control and the concomitant message of who actually has the control takes a psychological toll, especially when spread out over 13 hours, and ultimately leads to coerced and false confessions, which is exactly what happened here. Tricks and psychological manipulation have been considered by courts in evaluating the totality of the circumstances as factors weighing in favor of involuntariness. Petitioner's will was overborne by official pressure, fatigue, and sympathy falsely aroused when, inter alia, a police officer who was a childhood friend of the defendant told the defendant that he, the officer, would get in trouble with the police force if the defendant failed to confess. I'm sorry, so let me confess to murder, because I would hate for you to get in trouble. Fuck off. Wow. Finding a statement coercive when the police told a juvenile suspect he could face the death penalty and be subjected to prison violence. Similarly, a person's lack of experience with police encounters is relevant in determining whether they are susceptible to overbearing police tactics. Ms. Virzi, of course, has no criminal record. Taken in its totality, the Commonwealth's evidence at the hearing demonstrated that the conditions and the duration of Ms. Virzi's 13-hour detention rendered her statements to law enforcement involuntary. Indeed, the Commonwealth's response to the investigators' psychological manipulations at every turn appears to be that the investigators would have done things differently if only Ms. Virzi had asked. But the question of involuntariness is not one of what would have or could have happened. It is whether what did happen deprived Ms. Virzi of the ability to freely choose whether to make a statement. Here, it unequivocally did, and thus the statements must be suppressed. You know, I have always wondered how it is that cops can get away with lying and basically saying and doing whatever they want to get you to make a statement. I don't understand how that is not against your, civil rights or whatever. I mean, it just seems like that is so dirty And if they can't get you to confess on legitimate grounds, then you shouldn't be confessing, and they shouldn't want it. If they have to lie to you and manipulate you to confess to what they want you to confess to, then maybe they're looking at the wrong person to confess. You know what I mean? I mean, how is it that they get the one up? They get the extra support of lying, and they get to one up you by doing whatever it takes to get a confession. I don't think that should be allowed, because if they have to go to extremes to get a confession out of you, I mean, shouldn't that tell you right there that maybe you're looking at the wrong person for a confession? I wouldn't want to take a confession that I wasn't sure was legitimate if I was a police officer. I couldn't send somebody to prison that I didn't believe fully that they belonged there. I I have questions. That's all. Okay, moving on. B. Ms. Virzi's arrest and detention lacked probable cause. She was the only one there with the baby when the baby became unresponsive and passed away. So how is that unprobable cause? The evidence presented at the hearing also shows that Ms. Virzi's 13-hour detention should never have happened in the first place, because investigators lacked probable cause to arrest her at 6:07 a.m. on June 16, 2024. Quote, whether probable cause exists is a highly fact-sensitive inquiry that must be based on the totality of the circumstances as viewed through the eyes of a prudent, reasonable, cautious police officer guided by experience and training, end quote. In fact, several investigators admitted they lacked probable cause to make an arrest at various times throughout the morning of the 16th. What? Detective Curtis testified. Question, did you have probable cause based on the information that you had at the time she was transported to headquarters to arrest her? His answer, I wouldn't go that far. Detective Sattler testified. Question, at the point that you are placing these phone calls to Ms. Virzi, did you have enough probable cause to arrest her at that point based on the information that you had? Answer, I didn't even know a crime had been committed at that point. Detective Triolo indicated that as of approximately 6:30 a.m., Ms. Virzi would have been free to leave if she would have asked to leave. Wow. Thus indicating a lack of probable cause to further detain her. The lack of probable cause supporting her detention beginning at 6:07 a.m. and continuing through the morning provides a separate constitutional basis to suppress Ms. Virzi's statements. But did they come out and tell her she's free to leave? No. And how many people would know that? The bulk of the Commonwealth's evidence on this point turns on the contention that Ms. Virzi was allegedly, quote-unquote, free to leave at any time before she requested a lawyer and was shackled to the floor of the interview room. But that explanation strains credulity and, in fact, is contradicted by the evidence. First, no one told Ms. Virzi she was free to leave. And despite their insistence that the interview room door was not locked during the early part of her detention, the video evidence clearly contradicts this. At 7:59 a.m., when an audible click locking the door can be heard after Detective Triolo leaves the room. When the video demonstrates Ms. Virzi pounding on the door and yelling for help at 7:52 a.m. for almost 4 minutes. Answer, I think I did hear the thunk when I rewatched it. Even before she arrived at police headquarters, investigators knew when they seized Ms. Virzi's phone and searched her purse outside her Airbnb that Ms. Virzi was from out of town, completely unfamiliar with Pittsburgh, with no car and no ability to leave. While Ms. Virzi was told by Detective Sattler, these are all names that sound familiar. I think they're on the first 48 hours. Triolo and Sattler and what was the other guy's name? I can't remember. But I think that they're regulars on the first 48 hours. She would be picked up and brought to her friend's apartment, getting her to agree to meet. But once Detective Curtis, the Detective Curtis. Arrived at the Airbnb, he did a bait and switch and instead informed her she was going to police headquarters. Detective Curtis then seized her phone and kept it with him in another vehicle, and the investigators knew that someone like Miss Virzi, who had never had any prior interactions with law enforcement, was unlikely to refuse to comply with their requests. In short, the officers put Miss Virzi in a situation that was the functional equivalent of an arrest, that she should have been supported by probable cause, but it was not. Then it cites another case. That it cites that case, and it says, acknowledging that a custodial detention occurs when the nature, duration, and conditions of an investigative detention become so coercive as to be the functional equivalent of an arrest. The evidence demonstrates, well, yeah, if she wasn't under arrest, she shouldn't have even been handcuffed. So why was she handcuffed and chained to the floor? That's weird. The evidence demonstrates that Miss Virzi was already placed in custody before she was taken to police headquarters. The analysis requires the court to consider the quote-unquote, the reasonable impression conveyed to the person subject to the seizure rather than the subjective views of the police officer making the arrest. Here, the only reasonable impression conveyed to Miss Virzi was that she was not free to leave as of 6:07 a.m. when Sergeant Lippert placed her in the back of his marked police vehicle without her phone. From the first moment she saw that police vehicle, Miss Virzi was frightened and expressly asked if she was being arrested. And from that point on, all indications told her that she was, in fact, under arrest. Her personal belongings were searched, her phone was taken away, she was transported in a marked police vehicle while handcuffed, I'm assuming, to police headquarters instead of the apartment where she expected to go. And she was immediately placed in a locked interview room where she was told she had to yell or bang on the table if she needed anything. Then they have an exhibit of that. She was escorted by 2 police officers when she wanted to go to the bathroom. To emphasize how truly dependent Ms. Virzi was on the investigators, it is clear from the video that she did not even know where the police station was located. Then they have an exhibit for that. It is undisputed that the investigators never told Ms. Virzi she could leave, and she certainly had no way to do so. The subjective views of the officer are irrelevant to the arrest analysis. In discussing their actions after Ms. Virzi invoked her right to counsel, Detective Curtis and Detective Triolo both used the term quote-unquote detained rather than arrested as it related Ms. Virzi's status. Quote, she was not under arrest yet when she invoked her right to counsel and was shackled to the ground. She was being detained, end quote. Such testimony ignores distinctions courts have drawn between a brief investigatory detention, which this certainly was not, and a custodial detention that was the functional equivalent of an arrest, which it was. Among the factors courts consider are, quote, the basis for the detention, end quote, its duration, the location, whether the suspect was transported against her will, the method of detention, the show or threat of force, and the investigative methods used. Here, investigators' only basis for escalating the detention at approximately 8:28 a.m. was that Ms. Virzi invoked her rights to silence and counsel. And in their subjective view, what she was telling them did not add up. Then they have an exhibit for that. Quote, all of the aspects of what she was telling us during the interview did not match, end quote. As for duration, the detention ended up being 13 hours long, well beyond a mere investigatory detention, and occurred not in public but in a locked interview room in Pittsburgh Police Headquarters. Moreover, Ms. Virzi was transported to headquarters rather than back to the apartment as she expected, which suggests that she had been transported somewhere against her will. Oops. Question. Now you have a discussion with Ms. Virzi about her coming to the scene, which is the apartment that you are waiting outside of, correct? Yes. Finally, the method of detention being shackled to the floor and locked in a room. The show of force being transported in a marked police vehicle by an armed and uniformed officer, and the investigative methods interrogation in which Miss Virzi was repeatedly told that officers did not believe her story all demonstrate that this was in fact a custodial detention and the functional equivalent of an arrest from the beginning. Yet the testimony at the hearing indicated that there was no probable cause. Question: so, at that point, you believe you had probable cause to arrest her? Answer: there would have been more to wait for. These circumstances, they didn't even know if the baby, they hadn't even had an autopsy yet, so they didn't even know the cause of death. These circumstances, taken in their totality, show that Miss Virzi was arrested without probable cause at 6:07 a.m., and any statements she made from that point forward must be suppressed. C. Miss Virzi was not taken to a magistrate without unnecessary delay. At 8:27 a.m. on June 16, 2024, after Miss Virzi invoked her right to counsel, she was quickly told she was being detained and that she was going to jail. Pennsylvania Rule of Criminal Procedure provides, quote, when a defendant has been arrested without a warrant in a court case, a complaint shall be filed against the defendant, and the defendant shall be afforded a preliminary arraignment by the proper issuing authority without unnecessary delay, end quote. This Pennsylvania rule is a mirror to Fedar Crim P, which is the statute, I guess, which provides that a person making an arrest within the United States must take the defendant without unnecessary delay before a magistrate judge or before a state or local judicial officer. These rules were enacted as a result of the McNabb v. U.S. and Mallory v. U.S. line of cases where the Supreme Court enforced prompt arraignment requirements by excluding confessions obtained from arrested persons during a period of unlawful delay in bringing them before a judicial officer for a determination of probable cause. That's the only thing so far that I see that they have a chance at proving. The U.S. Supreme Court has held that, quote, even voluntary confessions are inadmissible if given after an unreasonable delay in presentment, end quote. The court has also held that, quote, a confession given 7 hours after arrest inadmissible for unnecessary delay in presenting the suspect to a magistrate, where the police questioned the suspect for hours within the vicinity of numerous committing magistrates, end quote. The requirement that police must, with reasonable promptness, show legal cause for detaining arrested person constitutes an important safeguard, not only in assuring protection for the innocent, but also in securing conviction of the guilty by methods that commend themselves to a progressive and self-confident society. We'll only go 20 pages today, and then we'll read some more tomorrow. In this case, after Ms. Virzi invoked her right to counsel and asked to make a phone call at 8:27 a.m., she was told by Detective Curtis, quote, you don't get a phone call. It doesn't work like that. You can have a lawyer. We're done talking to you. We're done asking you any questions, but you get your phone call down at the jail, okay? And she's being detained now, end quote. The investigators then waited until 7:30 p.m., nearly 12 hours later, to take Ms. Virzi to the jail. That's a little extreme. Delay for the purpose of interrogation is the epitome of unnecessary delay. Opining that the only element bearing upon the reasonableness of delay was not such circumstances as the pressing need to conduct further investigation, but the arresting officer's ability, one, the prisoner had been secured, to reach a magistrate who could issue the needed warrant for further detention. A delay is unreasonable and unnecessary when it is of a nature to give opportunity for the extraction of a confession. A delay caused by law enforcement's desire to investigate other crimes is not a legitimate excuse for their failure to respect the right to a prompt arraignment. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has not applied the McNabb-Mallory test as an all-or-nothing exclusionary rule. Instead, the following factors have been applied to assist in a court's determination: the unavailability of a magistrate, the accused's actual knowledge of his rights and the charges, the time spent transporting the accused to the jurisdiction where the warrant was issued, and delay attributable to the accused's mental or physical condition. Courts have also applied factors which have traditionally been recognized in the determination of the voluntariness of a confession for purpose of Miranda warnings, including but not limited to the duration and means of interrogation, the defendant's physical and psychological state, the conditions attendant to the detention, the attitude exhibited by the police during the interrogation, and any other factors which may serve to drain one's power of resistance to suggestion and coercion. Accordingly, in Pennsylvania, voluntary statements given more than 6 hours after arrest when the accused has not been arraigned are no longer inadmissible per se. While there is no time limit that presumes involuntariness, Pennsylvania courts must determine whether the delay in presentation was timely under the totality of the circumstances, considering all applicable and relevant factors, including the cause and effect of any delay beyond 6 hours. In this case, the delay of 12 hours after Ms. Virzi invoked her right to counsel and was arrested, in addition to the conditions of her confinement, render her second statement to the investigators inadmissible. I don't know. It seems like they had some pretty legit arguments, her defense attorneys, and yet they were denied. So apparently the judge didn't see it their way. So I think that's going to be all that we read today. I'll pick up where we left off tomorrow, because my mind is getting numb, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing the monotone reading of it. But yeah, before you go, has anybody been watching the Masters golf tournament? It's pretty good. I missed the end today. I know that McIlroy made it back up into first place because he had dropped down and he was tied for fifth at one point, and then he started working his way up. But that Rose guy, wow, what a guy. I mean, he's doing awesome. I'm pretty impressed. But yeah, Bryce DeChambeau didn't even make the cut, which they were predicting him to win the whole thing this year, so that was pretty surprising. John Baum, John Rahm, I can't remember. Anyway, he did okay. He made the cut, but he, didn't place in the top at all, but he did okay today. He, I think he had like 5, 6 or 7 birdies, I think they said. So he did really good today. John Rahm, that's his name. Yeah. But what I don't understand is how they, Wes Bryan is fighting to get back into the PGA, and they're not allowing it because he did the Live Golf tour, but yet, Bryce DeChambeau and the Rahm guy, and there were some others. Oh no, not him. I can't remember who else, but there were quite a few playing in the Masters this weekend that also play in the Live Golf organization. So I don't know why they're allowed to play in the PGA circuit when they're also playing Live Golf, and yet Wes Bryan is not allowed. So there's that. But yeah, it was pretty good to watch. It was pretty interesting. I've been watching a lot of Bob Does Sports, so I'm really into the golf right now. But until my husband's wrist is healed all the way, I guess we won't be playing any golf anytime soon, and I don't want to go by myself. So anyway, so we will pick up where we left off tomorrow, and until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a good evening. Have a good rest of your weekend, even though there's only a few hours left. I hope your weather is nicer than ours, and that's about it. So ciao for now.